In question 1 we have been given some electricity cost data and we're asked to, in part A, construct a frequency distribution with the upper class boundaries of 100, 120 and so on using pivot tables, as well as then plotting the histogram for part B, and finally just to give a summary and look at where the cost is concentrated. So I've already opened the file and we've got our utility charges in column A. So I can place my mouse in the top left hand corner, so cell A1. I can go to Insert, Pivot Table. Just make sure that it's found the data, and it has. We've got 50 rows, so with the heading that means we have to go down to row 51. And I'm just going to put this on a new worksheet to keep it nice and simple. Okay, so we have our skeleton table and we can drag our utility charge field into the row fields. Now that of course finds every different amount and it's certainly not looking like a summary table, so we need to right click and go into the grouping option, and then we can tell Excel how we want the classes to be constructed. Now we're wanting to have boundaries at $100, $120 and so on, so we're going to have a width of 20, and I'll just round off my starting value to 80 so that we get those classes that we're looking for. Say OK and we can see that Excel has created the groups that we're wanting. Now it's just a matter of dragging in the utility charge to the data items area, double checking that it's counted, and we therefore have our frequency distribution. So we can certainly turn that into a histogram by clicking on the pivot chart, choosing just our basic 2D column, saying OK. Now I'll just move that closer to the table. Of course this needs a little bit of tidying up. We don't need our legend. We can change the gap width by going into the Format Data Series option and just making the gap width 0. You can add a little bit of formatting, just some outline in black, and that makes the bars just show up that little bit better. We can go in and adjust our title, something like Distribution of Electricity Prices. And we can of course add in some labels. So under Layout we can put in our horizontal axis label, and we could use monthly electricity cost. And we could, in fact, we'll just go back into there and we'll just put in a $sign since we haven't got that on the actual values for the classes. And we can also go in and put in our vertical axis and just use something like frequency. Okay, now that creates our histogram, and that's based on a count. If we want to change from just a count to turning those into percentages, we can certainly do that. So if I double click on count, at the moment we've got the count option, but notice that there's another tab called Show Values As. If we go in there, currently they're displaying as normal, which is what we would expect, but if I have a look at the drop down arrow, we can see that you can actually get some percentages. So we can do a percentage of the column, say OK, and you can see that that goes through and just changes everything into percentages for us. Now if we do work with percentages, we don't really need to have the frequency label, so we would remove that. And we've got the actual percentage symbol written on the figures on that vertical axis now. So you can see that it didn't actually change the shape, it just changed the labeling. So depending on how you're going to write about the information, frequency or percentages, both could be quite useful. Okay, and lastly, we just had to have a look at where the electricity costs were concentrated, and by certainly having a look at either the frequency distribution or the histogram, we can see that monthly electricity costs are concentrated between $140 and $160 a month, with more than 25% of the bills falling within that interval. And in fact, we can see from now switching into percentages that in fact it's 26% that are within that group.